The envelope arrived on a cold November morning in Portland, Oregon. It had no return address, no company logo, and no explanation. Just my name, written carefully across the front in neat black ink. At first, I almost threw it away. Bills, warnings, and bad news had become such a regular part of my life that I no longer expected anything good to arrive in the mail. But when I opened the envelope, a small photograph slipped into my lap. The moment I saw it, my heart nearly stopped. It was a picture of me standing outside a bus station 3 years earlier, and written on the back were 7 words that made my hands shake. "I never forgot your last $20. I stared at the photo for several minutes, unable to breathe normally. 3 years earlier, I had given my last $20 to a complete stranger. I had never learned his name. I had never seen him again. And now somehow, someone had found me. How? Why? And what did they want after all this time? If you believe kindness can change a life, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories. Also, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. 3 years earlier, my life looked very different. My name is Ryan, and at the time I was 38 years old. I had recently lost my job at a warehouse after budget cuts. 6 months later, my marriage collapsed under the weight of financial stress, and my wife moved away. The small apartment I rented felt more like an empty box than a home. Most nights I sat alone listening to traffic outside my window, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. One rainy afternoon, I walked to the downtown bus station with exactly $20 left in my wallet. That money was supposed to buy groceries for the week. I remember checking my balance 3 times because I couldn't believe things had become so bad. $20 stood between me and an empty refrigerator. As I stood beneath the station awning, watching rain pour from the gray sky, I noticed a man sitting alone on a bench. He looked exhausted. His clothes were soaked. His face carried the kind of hopelessness I recognized immediately because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. People walked past him without looking. Then our eyes met. Something about that moment felt different. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't holding a sign. He simply looked defeated. For several minutes, I argued with myself. I needed that money. Every dollar mattered. But another part of me kept thinking about how close I was to becoming that man myself. Finally, I pulled the $20 bill from my wallet and handed it to him. His eyes widened with disbelief. He looked like he wanted to say something important, but emotion seemed trapped in his throat. I nodded once and walked away before I could change my mind. By the time I reached home, I already wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. Had I just given away the last money I had? And would I ever know what happened to that stranger? The next several years were difficult. I worked temporary jobs, I delivered packages, I cleaned office buildings at night. Slowly, life improved. Not dramatically, not magically, just one small step at a time. Then, exactly 3 years later, that mysterious photograph arrived. Inside the envelope was a second note. It contained only an address. Nothing else. No explanation, no signature. For 2 days, I carried the note in my pocket. Part of me thought it was a scam. Another part couldn't stop thinking about it. Eventually, curiosity won. The address led to a large house overlooking the Columbia River. As I pulled into the driveway, my stomach tightened. Luxury cars sat outside. The property looked like something from a movie. There was no way this place had any connection to me, yet somehow it did. Before I could knock, the front door opened. A woman stepped outside. She appeared to be in her early 40s. Her dark hair was damp from rain, and water dripped from the sleeves of her coat. Thunder rolled across the sky behind her. She looked strangely nervous. Then she asked a question I never expected. She asked if she could use my bathroom. For a second, I thought I had heard her incorrectly. I wasn't even at my own house. Yet her expression carried such urgency and embarrassment that I simply nodded. She rushed inside. Several minutes later she returned, looking relieved but emotional. Then she smiled through tears. And that's when the first shocking truth emerged. The woman wasn't a stranger at all. She was connected to the man from the bus station. Her name was Sarah, and she had spent 3 years trying to find me. I sat in stunned silence as she explained. The man I had helped wasn't homeless, at least not originally. His name was Michael. 3 years earlier, he had lost everything. A failed business, mounting debt, family tragedy, and severe depression had pushed him to the edge. He had traveled across several states with almost no money left. The day I met him at the bus station had been the lowest point of his life. Sarah's voice trembled as she revealed the next twist. The $20 I gave him wasn't important because of its value. It was important because it stopped him from ending his life that night. I felt a chill run through my body. She explained that Michael had planned to give up completely. Then a stranger, someone who had almost nothing himself, had chosen kindness anyway. That single act shattered his belief that nobody cared, and suddenly the photograph in my mailbox felt much heavier than paper. Could $20 really have changed someone's fate? Sarah wasn't finished. Michael used that money to buy a bus ticket to another city where an old friend offered him temporary work. The opportunity wasn't glamorous, but it gave him a fresh start. Months turned into years. The friend eventually became his business partner. Together, they built a successful logistics company. The company grew beyond anyone's expectations, but Michael never forgot the man who helped him when he was at rock bottom. For 3 years, he searched. Private investigators, public records, social media, anything that might lead him back to me. Yet another question remained. If Michael had finally found me, where was he now? Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, and that's when the second emotional twist arrived. Michael had passed away 6 months earlier. A sudden illness took him before he could complete his search. The room became completely silent. I had spent days imagining some grand reunion. Now that reunion could never happen. The man whose life had changed because of one small decision was gone. But Sarah reached into her purse and removed a thick envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The final letter Michael ever wrote. The letter was addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. Page after page described how one moment of compassion had restored his faith in humanity. He wrote about rebuilding his life. He wrote about learning to hope again. He wrote about waking up every day determined to become the kind of person who would help others the way I had helped him. By the time I reached the final page, tears blurred the words. Then came the third and biggest twist of all. Michael had established a charitable foundation before his death. Its purpose was to help struggling families, unemployed workers, and people facing personal crises. And in his will, he left instructions that I should become the foundation's first honorary director. I couldn't believe what I was reading. A man I met for less than 5 minutes had built an entire legacy around one act of kindness. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Your support helps us share more stories that remind people there is still kindness in this world. Over the following months, Sarah and I worked together to continue Michael's mission. We helped families pay rent. We provided emergency assistance. We supported people who felt forgotten. And every time we helped someone, I thought back to that rainy day at the bus station. The day I almost kept walking. The day $20 felt like everything I had. One afternoon, nearly a year later, a violent storm swept through Portland. Rain hammered the windows as I organized paperwork inside the foundation office. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Standing outside was a young woman completely soaked by the storm. Water dripped from her jacket. Her hands trembled from the cold. She looked embarrassed as she asked a simple question. Could she please use the bathroom? The moment felt strangely familiar. As she stepped inside, I remembered Sarah arriving drenched by rain on the day my entire life changed, and I couldn't help wondering whether another unexpected story was about to begin. When the young woman returned, she quietly explained that she had lost her job and had nowhere else to go. She was scared, alone, and running out of options. I looked at her and saw reflections of Michael, reflections of myself, reflections of every person who had ever needed one more chance. We helped her, not because it was convenient, not because it was profitable, but because someone once helped a stranger at exactly the right moment. Comment, kindness wins, if you believe one small act can change someone's future. Today, the foundation has helped thousands of people across the country. Every success story traces back to a single rainy afternoon and a $20 bill that almost stayed in my wallet. Sometimes people think changing the world requires wealth, power, or influence. But Michael's story proved something different. Sometimes changing a life begins with noticing someone everyone else ignores. Sometimes hope arrives disguised as a small sacrifice. And sometimes the greatest gift you ever give returns in ways you could never imagine. I still keep Michael's photograph in my desk drawer. Whenever life becomes difficult, I look at those 7 words written on the back. I never forgot your last $20. Neither have I. Because that day taught me a truth I will carry for the rest of my life. Kindness is never wasted. You may never see where it travels. You may never know whose heart it reaches. But somewhere, somehow, it keeps moving forward, creating ripples long after the moment has passed. And every once in a while, those ripples find their way home.